A very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. This is a weekend edition of the program. I'm Jeffrey Ozama.
Yes, indeed, TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. Welcome to your perfect morning starter, where we'll help you make sense of all the biggest stories in the last 24 hours. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, Bukola and I were talking about the price. We always debate about the price of crude oil and PMS because if she has her way, that price should go down to 200 naira. But for good reasons, because Nigerians see that whenever the price of crude oil goes up in the market, naturally, gantry price goes up almost immediately, and then the knock-on effect in terms of price you buy it at the fuel station also goes up literally immediately. So I try to explain how sales works when it comes to increase. So from experience, from what I've seen, it feels like whenever it goes up, I mean the highest cost component, which I call the crude oil, I think this morning I'm seeing is oscillating around $78 to $80. The Strait of Hormuz is meant to be open today. I understand about 80 million barrels.
The agreement will be signed today, right?
Yes.
In Switzerland.
Yes, agreement is meant to be signed today, so that I wish we had all the, but I don't know that you've seen it, but it's like a 14-point agreement or 15-point agreement.
Trump administration officials have described it as an agreement, dominating a page and a half. So I have not seen the
I have seen
items.
I've seen.
Okay, so go ahead and tell us.
I read through all of it, but where I'm going to with the crude, I'll just giving the people an update that as of this morning, Brent is still around $79, $80. As against where it was. So people are doing their calculation that is inching closer to where we were. They need accelerated decrease in pump price of PMS. But I was looking through the boards of fuel stations. I can see it's now down to 1,220. It should be lower than that. So they are maybe watching whether this deal will be signed, whether it will be respected in the long run, so Nigerians can have to just bear the burden on Nigerians is a lot. So we're going to be engaging the players in the ecosystem to see why the prices and how soon that's the right word, how soon the prices will go down. So Bukola, when I was reading through, now going back to the issue of the agreement, Bukola and the audience is, I think I saw it somewhere. I published it somewhere. One of the things America has always wanted is to make sure that Iran agrees not to develop nuclear weapon. I think it was Donald Trump that was saying ballistic missiles. Well, if others have it, it will not be fair for them to have not to have ballistic missiles. But nuclear weapons is a no-no. That is one thing the Republicans and the Democrats and the American government and people seem to agree that, look, we can agree on anything, but when it comes to the issue of developing nuclear weapons, no. And so that was a strategic objective after billions of dollars were spent for this particular war. So
I think another item that was being debated and seemed to be a gray area as meetings and conversations led to the agreement being signed was whether or not sanctions would be lifted on Tehran. Another thing that we should also be watching out for is that Israel has distanced itself, am I correct, Jeffrey, from this agreement? And if that is the case, we should also watch the Middle East closely against the backdrop of Israel's position on this agreement. Why? Because of the natural, state of relations between Iran and Israel, which has traditionally been hostile. In fact, tilting more towards hatred because of long-standing perception, allegations, sometimes evidence that Iran sponsors the Hamas-led group in Israel. And so this is cheery to note. The agreement really, regardless of the other gray areas, is interesting to note, especially because of the challenges that the world has had to go through in the last couple of months, because the price of crude oil is dependent on the vagaries of the international community, sometimes conflict, as we have seen between U.S., Iran and Israel, and other challenges of that determine the price of crude oil. for me, Jeffrey, I keep saying it, that if price goes up, the price of crude oil goes up in the international community, and that is fair justification for the increase in the pump price of petrol back home and in other countries of the world, then we should see a commensurate reduction in the pump price of petrol back home as well. But that usually is not the case. And in this case, I return again to what we were buying petrol for in February at the start of this conflict, and it hovered somewhere around 760 to 800 naira plus naira per liter, depending on where you are in the country. And so what we now have is a reduction in the pump price of petrol by the major supplier, which is Dangote Refinery, to the tune of about 75 naira per liter. That is insignificant because of what we were buying it for at the time the conflict started. And the explanations, for me, do not justify the price that we're currently buying it for. They usually quote, high margin. What's that terminology? Premium.
Yeah, it's tight margin, high volume.
Yes, tight margin.
That's a model, actually.
High volume. But if we look,
that's a model.
If the inner books, because sometimes trade secrets remain what they are, trade secrets. For business people, entrepreneurs, industrialists, they remain trade secrets. But if we looked into the books, I'm worried that marketers may be making a killing on the people, and the people are groaning already beneath the weight of pump price of petrol, which pretty much determines every other thing, price of food, price of finished products, price of every other thing. And so we hope that changes. But that's not the only thing we're following for you this morning. The Nigerian Governors Forum.
Yeah, just before that, I wanted to say that I saw the 8th item in the agreement that says the Islamic Republic of Iran reiterates that it will never produce nuclear weapons. So I just wanted to show of the specific, because there are so many other things America is concerned about, and Iran is also concerned about. I know there's going to be some financial commitment, lifting of sanction. I think that commitment is about 300 billion or so. So all eyes on the Strait of Hormuz today. 111 days down the line, it's been closed for that long, sometimes restricted, sometimes closed. So I understand 80 million barrels of crude just waiting for this agreement to be signed, and then boom. So we expect oil prices to crash today, because that's how it works, and maybe commodities like metals and all of that will go up for those who are in the market. Bukola.
Yes, indeed. We're also watching developments back home, right? And speaking of which, let's head to Abuja, where the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation says recurring communal crises show the need for stronger institutions and sustained collaboration despite investment in peace building. And we know that the Nigerian Governors Forum has now met and decided a stronger backing for state policing, but they say that it has to be grounded in constitutional framework, and the template has to be sound as far as the structure is concerned before it actually takes shape in reality. But I also recall that part of the conversation is that the Inspector General of Police, Olatunji Disu, has allayed fears of officers in the force currently about the implications of state police, that it doesn't mean any loss of jobs, and it doesn't affect the Nigeria Police Force as an institution itself. But if we have the soundbite from the governor of Ogun State, who addressed the press after the meeting held behind closed doors by the Nigerian Governors Forum, such that we'll have an up-close feel of the thinking of the Governors Forum.
We members of the Nigeria Governors Forum, NGF, at our meeting held today, deliberated on issues affecting the country, and following extensive deliberations, the forum resolved as follows. The forum received a presentation from the NGF Secretariat and a delegation of the Honorable Attorneys General of the states on efforts to support establishing state police in Nigeria. It noted a dedicated consultation with the Attorney General to review the proposed constitutional amendments and frameworks. Governors emphasized the need for the state police to be constitutionally sound and aligned with federalism and citizens' rights. The forum noted the collaborative effort and added that the consultation outcomes will strengthen the state's collective position. The forum received a presentation on the National Solar Supergrid Initiative, NSSG, a proposal to expand electricity access through large-scale decentralized solar generation integrated with a national high-voltage transmission network. The forum noted the initiative's potential to support industrialization, improve energy security, strengthen state electricity markets, and accelerate economic growth. Governors reiterated their commitment to ongoing power sector reforms and to strengthening collaboration among stakeholders to expand access to reliable and affordable electricity for Nigerians.
All right, welcome back. So that's Nigeria's Governors Forum. Governor Dakpa Abiodun speaking on their behalf. We know there will be teething problem. We're expecting all of that. One of the things Nigerians should expect, besides the good part, is that policing will now be closer to the people. That is the bigger picture. So we'll expect more effectiveness, of policing across communities, across state. But we also know that it will be abused by some persons. So that's why the legislation in framing these laws is going to be in the Constitution, and then the details will be maybe in an act establishing state police. We'll be able to know exactly how far they can go, because even with the ones they have, like local government and state houses of assembly, some of these governors make a mess of what democracy really is. They are the ones that some of them will shout about federalism, but within their states is nothing close to federalism. But we cannot throw the baby and the bathwater all in one. But let's bring in our guest, Mr. Dayakin, to be joins us right here in our Lagos City. Thank God it's Friday.
Some of us don't like Fridays. Some of us prefer Mondays. But thank God it's Fridays. Yeah. Weekend is time for rest and rejuvenation.
Well, we work. We always work. Yes. By the way, tomorrow is Ekiti election, so everyone literally is going to be watching what's playing out. In fact, the election, the troubles, permit me to use that word, the troubles in the country has overshadowed whatever election. Sometimes people don't even know there's an election tomorrow. We have to remind them there's an election. Even maybe people in Ekiti, some may not even be conscious because of the economic situation, security situation that has taken the shine. But for your information, June the 20th, Ekiti people will be deciding whether they'll keep the job of the governor or they will look for someone else. Some candidates have already indicated interest. But let's go to this Nigeria, if this Nigeria is ready. This Nigeria is where we started from. Ekiti. Gladiators go to war tomorrow. 1.03 million voters to decide Oyebanji Oluyede others' fate as INEC assures of free poll. So that's the last time we had over. Ekiti is a small state in terms of the numbers of registered voters, the population, and even accredited voters. So I have some of the data. The last time we saw over 1 million people registered to vote in an Ekiti election was in 1999, actually. And voter turnout was averaging around 40-something%. If you do the analytics, you see that voter turnout in Ekiti is 30-something, let's just say 40+%. The highest was in 2010 during the second coming of Ayofayoshe, which was about 73 or 74% in terms of outliers. But the total people that came out to vote in that election were still less than 500,000. What do you make of this tomorrow?
Well, I think the fact that they have 1 million plus registered voters is a plus. I think that's quite an impressive number for a state as small as Ekiti. I don't quite know what the population is, but 1 million
it's
registered.
About 3 point something million.
Well, 1 million registered voters is not bad, considering that quite a number of the citizens are underage, are not eligible to vote anyway. So I saw the run-up, the preparations. I saw the materials being delivered. I saw the security presence. I listened to the INEC people talking about their preparations. And this election might actually kind of be a barometer for 2027 that will help us begin to see how 2027 elections might play out. So this might be a test run of sorts. In terms of the contestants, the incumbent governor is very quiet, introspective, seriously focused type of politician, and feelers from the population, people seem to think he's done quite well. If anything is going to affect his candidacy at all, it's the general malaise that affects the entire country in terms of the fact that the economy is tough, insecurity is rife. Nobody is exempt from that in any corner of Nigeria at the moment. So if he's got any drawbacks, it's that general perception of the fact that the country is not in a good place at this point in time. But in terms of him individually, there seems to be acclaim.
Today is Friday, so let's not campaign for him.
No, there seems to be acclaim. No, we are not campaigning for him. We are telling the truth as the people of Ekiti see it. However, his contestants, the other people contending against him, don't seem to have wide public acclaim. I mean, the PDP candidate, for example, was interviewed by our show yesterday, and I listened to him, and even though he spoke a good game, but the people in Ekiti don't seem to know him that well, and you're wondering, he seems to be somebody who just parachuted in from somewhere, perhaps out of the country. My sense is that he's probably a diaspora Nigerian, and he's talking a good game about change.
Because of NBC rule, I try to avoid being specific.
Absolutely.
So please, because of NBC rule, let's keep it general.
Those issues are just
let's keep it as general
germane enough to determine the outcome of the election.
Absolutely.
But let's get to another paper this morning, and I'm interested on what is seen on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Take a look at this. International Day. 40% inaccurate, false laboratory results worsen sickle cell epidemic pains. And there is an interesting spread here, giving insight into the challenge of sickle cell disease in the country, to be precise. You see 150,000 annual sickle cell disease births. Nigeria accounts for half of the world's annual sickle cell births, causing immense family pain. There is the price of ignorance. Of course, that's a no-brainer for those seeking to get married and do not, find out what their genotype is. Families face psychological trauma, financial exhaustion. There's also shifts to earlier screening, mandatory lab verification. There's another one here, Ms. Akitobi, 80% of broken marriages. Genotype incompatibility is frequently cited as the root cause of irreconcilable differences in divorce. And there's more information on this on the front page, but talk to us about this expose the Guardian is giving us, and in 2026, why is research still slow in democratizing cures that have been found for sickle cell disease?
Well, what that report is just basically saying is indicting a lot of laboratories in terms of the testing procedure to be able to properly identify carriers of this trait. And I think there's enough awareness out there now to where premarital counseling, one of the things they particularly prescribe is go and know your genotype, because if two carriers get married or come together, the chances of them producing a child with sickle cell disease is quite high. And it's unconscionable to bring a child, an innocent child, into the world to come and suffer and probably even have a very short life expectancy, because that's what this disease does. It essentially inhibits the production of red blood cells, which are necessary for life. So what that report is saying is that investigations have shown that quite a lot of the misinformation is coming from wrong diagnosis, corrupt laboratories.
And through that, I've had to do my genotype twice and have had two different results.
Yeah. So this is what is happening, is that the inconsistencies and inefficiencies of laboratory testing is inadvertently causing people to give birth to children or offspring with sickle cell trait, not because they did it intentionally. In the past, parents used to say, well, God will protect. It's not my portion. But as people have become more aware and more enlightened, they've taken it upon themselves to be aware of the genotype of their partners, and if they're both carriers, both AS or an AS and an SS, they will go their separate ways and go and marry other people, because they recognize the fact that the suffering behind carrying the sickle cell disease is one that is really quite traumatic, both for the child and for the parent who has to care for the child. So people will sacrifice love to be able to avoid having to go through that trauma. But now, despite the efforts, what this report is saying, despite the efforts of individuals to avoid this kind of thing happening, labs are making it happen because of negligence, and in some cases because of corruption. There are places where you are AS, but you are given an AA result, which will lead you to falsely believe you are clear and go ahead and marry somebody who might have the AS gene as well. So it all goes down to a lackadaisical work ethic, corruption as always. There are some people who, for various reasons, prefer to shield their status and are ready to pay to get a false report. So I think regulation is important at the end of the day. So much of what we do on a daily basis requires government intervention and oversight. I mean, who regulates the labs? Who monitors them? Who assures that they maintain the standards that are necessary for accurate testing and reporting? So who do we blame at the end of the day? I know that there are government agencies that should be monitoring these kind of things, but government itself is a bit distracted at the moment with issues of insecurity and issues of how to rejig the economy in such a way as to better the lives of Nigerians. So who is looking at these things? But at the end of the day, it's our future that's affected, because if we continue to bring children into the world that have this problem, first of all, it creates a burden on the healthcare system. It also is very expensive. And if you've seen the suffering of a sickle cell carrier, it'll break your heart. When they are in a crisis, it'll break your heart to see that this could have been avoided. So we need to do everything we can to make sure that these lapses do not occur. These are the lives of human beings we're talking about, both the carrier and the carer. Both of them are traumatized by this.
Okay, before we leave The Guardian, I think we have some more time. So let's look at that story above the nameplate, somewhere around that talks about import surge. Nigeria pays 1.9 trillion naira on petrol in May amid dip in oil prices. So importation of, I just wanted to read some part of the story. According to the Guardian newspaper, importation of PMS surged in May by 59.5%, as Nigerians spent 1.9 on petrol, despite a slide in oil prices. I just need to read that first header. So what do you make of this story?
Well, look, this Iran, Israel, US altercation has had a global impact on the entire...
This one is beyond the altercation. This is a conflict. It's a full-blown conflict.
Okay, so maybe I'm being euphemistic here so that NBC doesn't come down on us this morning. Anyway, look, as you were saying earlier, bottom line is they've come to an agreement. There's a ceasefire. They're going to sign it today in Switzerland, and oil prices will immediately react. In fact, it already started sliding, really, and we expect it to reduce further. Question for us on this end of the pond, of this end of the big pond, is how will it affect us? Will we immediately begin to see changes in the pump price? Well, you know, the penchant of our marketers to say, well, we're still selling old stock and we paid for the old stock at high prices, so we can't take a loss. We will liquidate all of the old stock before prices can adjust. Well, issue is Dangote Refinery claims he can supply enough to meet our daily demand. Nonetheless, marketers still insist on importing. Government is still giving import licenses. Dangote is exporting refined fuel, despite the fact that Nigeria needs much more from him because his particular supply can be price controlled. It doesn't incur transport costs. It doesn't incur so many other things. So I still think...
No, it incurs everything. I think that's the mistake.
It doesn't incur international shipping fee.
But there's still premium on whatever is happening in the local. You know, it incurs costs.
Jeffrey can afford to buy petrol even if it were 1,500 naira per liter.
No, it's for the sake of facts. It's for the sake of facts. He has a, not defending or whatever, just for facts reason and for people to understand how the system works.
Yes.
It's a 650,000 barrel production capacity per day.
Yes.
The NNPCL is not able to give him even up to half. In fact, recently they increased it.
Yes.
So he has to go and buy from somewhere.
Yes.
So even at some point, greater percentage of what he refines come from maybe WTI, from Western Texas, intermediate crude, and every other place he buys.
Yes.
So that's a cost component.
Yes.
Then the one from Nigeria adds to it.
Exactly. The one he gets from Nigeria doesn't incur transport costs.
Well, the Nigerian government hasn't given him subsidy from what we know, which is what they charted for in the fiscal element. So
it's not subsidy that is being the component of the one he gets from Nigeria now. That's not subsidy. We're talking about getting crude oil from Nigeria, part of the crude oil for production.
How do you think it works? He doesn't own a ship. He doesn't own the crude. He has to buy
the
from
ship
the
doesn't come from the Atlantic unlike the others.
No, it doesn't matter.
That's the point.
There's a premium on that's what I'm explaining to you. You're looking at it straight like that. It doesn't work like that.
Okay.
There's still a premium.
Tell us how it works.
Is it the same value?
Because the commodity
of the
is
cost
priced.
Incurred for shipping from other countries outside the world.
You can put
is it the same value?
You can put the logistics in terms of differentials. But what we're saying is that crude is priced in dollars.
Yes.
Let me say it again, crude is priced in dollars.
Yes.
So he's not going to buy it differently, except the government use fiscal measures to cut down his own price.
Right, but our point is that the one that he gets from NNPC in Nigeria does not incur international shipping costs. So however small that however small that quantum of crude that he's getting locally, that quantum should have less production cost than the one he's bringing from overseas, because he's not incurring international shipping fees. That's all I'm saying.
No, go ahead. I think I've explained myself. I don't know what else to explain.
I get you. That it amortizes by the time you basically... I get what you're saying. I understand. But the larger issue is, how do we bring succor to Nigerian consumers?
Which is the more important question.
Absolutely. And so, we'll begin to see Brent continue to slide as, the agreement comes into place. And so we will hope that...
People like Bukola and I, we want to buy it lesser. But let's see how it goes.
You think I don't want to buy it lesser too? And every Nigerian watching us today.
It's super expensive. So
yes, it is.
When we put out these facts, it's not as if we're backing, just to put the facts out so that people can know what the details are.
Yes, indeed.
But I don't think anybody is, even the government wants to buy it for cheaper.
Absolutely.
We have other papers this morning, right?
No, I think we okay, yeah. Bukola, you can go to the next one.
Yes, and the Vanguard, ideally, is the next this morning. Of course, at the top of the nameplate, I see that it also covers the oil conversation. But the big story from the Vanguard is where we actually, built upon at the start of the program this morning. The challenge of insecurity and the intervention that now seems to have gained a groundswell of support from 36 state governors, for which they briefed the press yesterday. Look at the big story. Insecurity. Governors seek swift establishment of state police, and there are some writers here say there's a need for state police to be constitutionally sound and aligned with Federalism and Citizens' Rights, State Attorneys General to review proposed constitutional amendments, frameworks for state police, reiterate commitments to ongoing power sector reforms. Of course, that's another outcome of that meeting yesterday, but so much alignments and conversations around state police, but does that take us to where we actually need in terms of, the outcomes, the results, quicker response time, the issue of welfare, the issue of, faster, quicker recruitment into the force at the state level now, this time around, and better management of crime. The all-important age-long conversation of the ratio of police to people. Will all of these be solved after we get around this constitutional debate on state police?
Well, clearly, state police is an idea whose time has come. And one of the things I was pleased about yesterday from the governor's report in terms of after the meeting was that they seem to be rather concerned about protecting the rights of citizens, which to me has always been the bogey in the room in terms of state police, has been concerns about abuses. And if anyone is going to abuse it at all, it will be the state governors. So the fact that they themselves are talking about ensuring that there's a constitutional framework that protects the rights of citizens, that tells me that we are on the right track. Now, the benefits of state policing are they're numerous, too numerous to count. You mentioned a few in terms of the quickness of response, the fact that command and control is localized and most of the recruits are local people. There's something else I also heard yesterday. I don't know if it was the IGP who said that the establishment of state police will not lead to loss of jobs in the federal police, because that was another big concern, was that the rank and file of the Nigerian police force were getting concerned that if the state police, the personnel ranks of the federal police will shrink, and so there might be job losses. But there was assurances yesterday that that's not going to happen. I'm also happy that attorneys generals of the 36 states are also coming together to look at the way to do the legal framework that will enable efficient operations while at the same time not only just achieving the objective but minimizing abuse or inhibiting intentional use of the state police for either political purposes, personal agendas, things as frivolous as, VIP escorts and things like that, which were abuses we saw with the federal police. I think by and large, there'll be a teething period when you do things like this that are completely radical changes from the norm. You go through a teething or a gestation period where there will be little bumps in the road, but we will learn as we go. That's not a reason not to do it out of a fear of the fact that there could be lapses here and there. So I think after the teething period is over, for me the concerns are issues of training, issues of funding, issues of recruitment, standardization of recruitment, because we don't want a situation where, the people being brought into state police are relatives of the political elite of the state or, party favorites, because we've seen that in some of the recruitment within the paramilitary, the vigilante groups set up by the various states. We've seen it as a reward for those who worked for the party in elections. As part of their reward, they allow them to nominate 5 or 6 people to be employed by, the vigilante, forces. So that should not happen within state police, to where it becomes a reward system for political, affiliation. It should be based on merit. It should be people who are screened properly, who are trained properly, who have no criminal record, who have a background that can pass some type of screening. So I look forward to it happening. I think it will help in this fight against insecurity. I think when you have people who are recruited from your ranks, your neighbors, you are more comfortable to go and tell them things.
But wouldn't this constitutional debate and the eventual plans for recruitment of fresh hands into what will now be a state police structure become tantamount to reinventing the wheel when we already have an outlook? There's the Civil Defense Corps, there's Neighborhood Watch, there's Amotekun, you know. So can't that now form a state police structure? Because there's already a template that addresses the all-important matter of funding, at least for these institutions.
I imagine that in many of the states that have these vigilante groups, like you said, Amotekun, Ebubeagu, those kind of things, I imagine that they will form the foundation for the state police. You don't need to go and start from scratch again when you already have a pseudo force that is structured for the exact same purpose. So I see them subsuming. I see Amotekun becoming the starting point for state police in the Southwest. And so, like you said, there's no need to go reinvent the wheel if you already have a semblance of something similar to what you're trying to achieve. You just more or less scale it up, you know. Things like Amotekun, for example, they can't really carry weapons. They're not constitutionally authorized to carry weapons, and people like Agbekoya, that kind of group, I think they are allowed only Dane guns. So it's a whole different perspective, because for you to be allowed to carry arms, you have to have some type of psychological grounding. So the recruiting process will be totally different, because state police have a lot more responsibility. They need to be more grounded. They need to know the law to some extent, which perhaps Amotekun might not need to do. They need to know the law. They need to know the rights of every citizen, so that they cannot just only protect them, but not even be the one to violate those rights. You know, like, what's the probable cause for me to want to arrest you? I need to know what the law states in terms of me apprehending a suspect. So it's a different level. I wouldn't want us to conflate, you know, the informal paramilitary sector with the state police that is constitutionally mandated, you know. So yes, we have the underpinnings, and we just build on that.
So let's go to New Telegraph as we wrap up. The name below the picture on the front page of the New Telegraph: FG to evacuate over 742 Nigerians in South Africa before June the 30th. You know, the match on match now. We had a conversation with the South African yesterday. Sometimes I'm trying to understand what exactly is the problem here, because on one hand, South Africa is more of a capitalist-oriented economy, which is free market. When you talk about the jobs, I don't know whether it's other Africans that take over their maybe public service jobs. I doubt, because that is, you know, their public service. Private sector, some of these people that they are trying to chase around, we can talk about the issue of undocumented immigrants. Right. That's an issue. But citizens being enforcers of undocumentation is a red flag. And on the second part is, for instance, Nigerians, the typical Nigerian is not necessarily looking for a job. He's going to create jobs. Yes. So I don't know who is what is it taking jobs from, as far as this argument by some of these South Africans is concerned. But, you know, politics has messed up a lot of these things because there's an election coming. But what do you make of this? June the 30th. This is not a deadline set by government. And when I listen to Cyril Ramaphosa, it doesn't look like the president is talking like a president. So what do you think is going on?
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that the government is complicit in this, the South African government, because they've not fought against this. They've not put their feet down. They've not put the hammer down and said, this is illegal, you can't do it, you have to stop. And apart from the fact that it's illegal, it's immoral as well. I mean, in this global age that we live, everybody's migrating. Migration is a global, who really comes from anywhere in particular? We all came from somewhere, and if by virtue of birth or by whatever we happen to be able to claim a particular place, that doesn't mean we can exclude, or we should exclude, other people from elsewhere. There's general xenophobic tension all over the world. I've said this before. You see places like the UK and the US tightening immigration rules. Even Canada has recently tightened its rules, but not to the point of, you know, the citizens, you know, breaking all laws and going out. I saw a video yesterday of, I believe it was an African, I don't know if it's a Nigerian, but I saw a video on social media yesterday where they had the man on the floor and they were beating him with plastic chairs, and they were actually trying to harm him and maim him, to where I truly believe that lives are endangered in South Africa now. If you're a foreigner, your life is really under threat, and so it behooves you to protect yourself if it means leaving the country at this time. There's anti-foreigner sentiment that is rife in South Africa right now. The ostensible reason is they said we're taking their jobs, especially Nigerians. And as Jeffrey correctly said, we don't go there to seek jobs particularly. They won't employ us in the civil service anyway. And I doubt that we would go and be seeking jobs in the private marketplace. We are entrepreneurs by nature. And most Nigerians who are there generally are traders and running various types of businesses that's contributing to their economy and employing their people as well. So for them to now give a deadline, I haven't heard the government speak up and say you can't do that, and that deadline is false, is not enforceable, and we will stand against it. I've not heard the government's been too quiet. So I appreciate the Nigerian government saying anybody who wants to leave, we will make it possible for you to do so. We've got 700 and something people coming before the end of the month.
Yeah, on this one, we give a lot of commendation to the Nigerian government.
Absolutely.
Who are not waiting for our people to be harmed, and we look. You chase us out of your country, you're the one that loses.
You lose.
I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
because you can't hold us down.
No.
We're brothers, we know what we did for South Africa, but it's a generational gap problem. And more importantly, it's a political problem.
It's a bit more than that, Jeffrey. Have you listened to some of the sound bites? It's, tantamount more towards hatred, especially for Nigerians. And they're painting all Nigerians in South Africa with the same brush, as being responsible for some of the social vices. And it's a bit unnatural for Africans.
Some of it has to do
Africans
with
are really hospitable people.
Yes.
I've been to a number of other African countries, although I haven't been to South Africa, but this is really concerning, and at the African Union level, the leadership level, it really should be addressed.
Does the African Union still exist?
Good question.
I didn't even hear his voice in this Iran.
With the greatest respect, so that they will not deny me visa for the event. I see African Union as Elders Forum.
Okay.
They just go gather and drink tea and go.
Oh, there you go.
They don't have a bite.
No,
they themselves are criticizing themselves. This is Ruto. They need a total dismantling of that union.
Absolutely.
And reorganizing
from
it.
scratch.
In fact, sometimes I feel that ECOWAS sometimes is more effective
than EU.
Than even EU.
Yes.
That can be. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Always. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, we'll take a break, and when we come back after this break, we head to Ekiti State. That's the first conversation. We'll talk about politics in general, but focus will be on Ekiti because of the election coming up tomorrow. Stay with us. Let's bring in Mr. Jide Ojo. He joins us on the program. Bukola has this one.
Yes, indeed. In less than 24 hours, about 1 million Ekiti residents will head to the polls to decide who becomes the next governor. Will they retain the incumbent, or will they choose from the other candidates that are positioning, to take up the Alagbaka government house in Ado Ekiti, the Ekiti state capital? And so there are so many issues, that are set up to decide who the next leader will be in Ekiti State. Of course, we've got all our correspondents in different parts of Ekiti State to bring us up to speed, to give us a sense of the pulse of the people amid this election. But let's bring in our guest analyst this morning to help us also look at some of the insights that will determine the election in Ekiti State. Mr. Jide Ojo is a public affairs analyst. He joins us virtually this morning. Good morning, Mr. Ojo. It's good to have you on the show again.
Good morning, Bukola. Good morning, Jeffrey. It's my pleasure.
Yes. I'd like to begin, where we took off from as far as the Ekiti election is concerned. Jeffrey was, talking about some very interesting things about, how this has been overshadowed by other issues at the national level, and perhaps very few Nigerians may even be paying attention to Ekiti State. From where you stand, is that the case, or this is just because Ekiti, like a few other states, holds elections in an off cycle, or if you like, staggered manner, as had been determined historically by the courts in past elections. So where do you see this election being impacted by issues at the national level and, of course, at home?
Thank you very much. So it's not impossible that the Ekiti people and Ekiti election will be impacted by the macroeconomic policies of the APC government under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. They are human beings. They also go to the same market, whether you are APC, PDP, any Labour Party member. You are not going to get a discount buying food or buying petrol, or even in terms of rent that you have to pay on your accommodation. So definitely it's going to impact. But whether it will be the sole determinant of who wins tomorrow is a different kettle of fish, because head or tail, wherever you run to, everybody is feeling the heat. Whether even for those of us in Abuja, it's double jeopardy. Rents are soared by over 100%. Food inflation is astronomical. So everyone in Nigeria, unless you are not in Nigeria, everyone feels the economic impact of the macroeconomic policies of the APC government under Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Now let's look at Ekiti itself ahead of this election, in terms of INEC preparedness and the campaign, as we have seen from the candidates. Have they approached this election with the level of seriousness that should rival these issues, that should match up these issues that you have outlined? Or has it been, rather lukewarm as against what Ekiti really was like in past elections? Did you also get that sense?
Bukola, let me tie it to the economy. If INEC, and they don't usually publish the budgets of what they spent on each state election, if INEC would give us the cost of organizing 2022 governorship election and what it's going to spend in this election, you will see that it may actually quadruple, because you are not going to pay the vendors the same amount. You are not going to pay the poll officials the same amount. You are not going to the cost of procuring sensitive and non-sensitive material. Well, I mean, the general election coming, INEC is requesting for over ₦1 trillion. We've never ever reached ₦1 trillion benchmark in our elections since 1923. But now, this commission will need over ₦1 trillion to conduct 2027 election. And so, economic-wise, yes, it's going to cost the electoral management body a lot more. And to the best of my knowledge, and I've been doing media rounds, INEC said they are very prepared, and this will be a litmus test for Professor Joash Ujuamu-Piton. Don't forget that the last time, the first baptism of fire he had was in November 2025 in Anambra, but it was barely 2 weeks in office as at the time that election was held. Perhaps the February 2026 area council election in Abuja here, yes, that is a council election. But in terms of election that one can say he actually superintended over the preparations, I think this is Ekiti Osaku governorship election. And the commission has repeatedly assured from the resident electoral commissioner, Dr. B.C. Omosa-Indemi and all the staff, they said they are ready to give us credible elections. We hope, pray, and we support them to succeed. But is the political class ready to support the commission? Because yes, the electoral management body shoulders heavier responsibility in terms of preparing, in terms of deployment of both materials but it cannot single-handedly deliver credible elections. I'm just reading this morning that police in Ekiti State said they have mapped out 460 flashpoints. I hope that they just didn't do mapping, but they have also deployed efforts to checkmate the bad boys from undermining the election. Because INEC will not do that. INEC does not have the resources, does not have the legal power to make arrests or to investigate. It's the police. Then you look at the political class. It's been said that the major challenge to this election tomorrow will be vote buying. And that also ties to economy. Remember, Ekiti State have a notorious challenge of Diboko Sebe. That's vote and cook a pot of soup, or what they otherwise call stomach infrastructure. And I have been to Ekiti a number of times. I think I was there. I was there in 2014. I was there in 2018 during the two off-cycle governorship election in that state. It was only in 2022 I didn't go, and perhaps this one I will not be there. But I've been to Ekiti twice this year in an election-related matters, February, March this year. I won't mention under which organization I went so that I don't sound like self-promotion. But by and large, vote buying, vote trading, and violence are the two major challenges that if the political class does not do the needful to rein in their supporters, their members, their chieftains, if they don't try to do that, it's going to undermine the election. With the best of intention from INEC, we don't want to hear tomorrow that people are giving 20,000 to go and vote, 10,000 to go and vote, or that there is violence or kidnapping. We do know security-wise, and that's why I'm happy that the security agencies said they have mapped out 460 flashpoints, particularly in areas like Ileje, Media, and Moba local government. They are having serious crisis of kidnapping in those two local governments. And in fact, some members, some Ekiti indigenes are still in captivity as we speak. Not just that it doesn't make headline like the case in Oyo and Borno. But some abductions are taking place this year. I don't know. I'm not too sure whether those abductees have been released. I think they were abducted in church or some places.
All right, Mr. So, if I may come in, yes. Just a moment, so that we can expand the conversation. I'm reading through or looking at some of the highlights of the Yaga Africa pre-election press statement, looking at what they've discovered so far. And so I went straight to the recommendation, just in alignment with what you said. And I want to read recommendation number 4 and ask my question. Political parties and candidates must publicly renounce vote buying, and voters are encouraged to reject inducement and protect the value of their votes. Sustained voter education on the dangers of vote trading remains essential in the days leading up to the election. We have less than, in fact, it's in hours now, so let's just call it 24 hours because the ballot opens, I think, about 8:30 or so. The polling unit opens about that time for people to come cast their ballot. So talk to us about what you perceive will be voter apathy or otherwise, and reinforce this conversation around vote buying. Is there really a cure? I expecting politicians not to be politicians, from my point of view, is almost impossible. It is now the law enforcement to see what they can do to save the people from selling their votes based on who prices them high or low.
You are not going to exterminate vote trading, no matter, the 2026 Electoral Act actually criminalized vote trading. But you can't stop politicians from doing what they intend to do. It can only be reduced. Let me tell you an experience I had in 2018 when I was in Ifaki to observe the election. What I saw was that when you vote here, someone will pass you a tally, not money, a tally, and then you go further down, there is a sawmill within that complex. So you go further to this somewhere behind the sawmill and collect your money. You use the tally to collect money. In another polling unit, I saw people writing their names and their account numbers. So at that time, what that party or party agents has decided to do was not to handle cash or to hand over cash to the voters, but to do transfer. And you know, today, in fact, internet banking and mobile banking has become the norm. So if somebody collects your account details and sends you money, it will not put vote buying there. It will say payment for service. How will you contradict that it was not payment for service, even if you see him making the transfer? So the politicians have found innovative ways of engaging in this vote trading. And because of the article, because of poverty level, yes, Ekiti is very educated. In fact, when you go to their farmlands and you think you are seeing a farmer, if you are not careful, you insult him in English, he will respond to you fiercely, because the industry in Ekiti is education. But then you asked me a question earlier about the impact of macroeconomic policies on the people. These are people that are facing existential challenge of paying their bills. Food is not cheap, rent is not cheap. They have to pay other bills, they have to buy data, they have to, so many things.
All right, Mr. Ojo, if we can pause for a moment, my apologies, please, because we understand our colleague, Dr. Ekiti is joining us from Ekiti, where he's going to give us update as to what he's seeing and what he's hearing, just general feelers. Dr. good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you guys doing over there?
We're good, we're good. We can see, it looks like there was light showers this morning, but it looks quite peaceful, nothing too intense. Walk us through what we need to know.
Well, it's a wet morning down here in Ekiti, the state capital, and as I'm talking to you, it's drizzling. But you know, that's what we do in Channels Television, under the rain, under the sun. We bring the news to you in your home, everywhere, at your fingertips. So we arrived here yesterday. It's been a vibrant city, you know, the influx of security agencies, politicians, journalists, election observers, civil society groups, all coming for Saturday's governorship election here in Ekiti, the Ekiti state capital. And you could also know that yesterday the campaigns ended due to INEC's deadline. And we saw politicians, political parties crisscrossing the state for the last-minute campaign. We also know that yesterday INEC deployed all the sensitive materials to the registration area councils, centers across the 16 local government areas in Ekiti state here. And it's by and large, you know, like we say, it's always looking like Christmas. So here in Ekiti, it's looking like there will be election, because yesterday people to polling units outside Ekiti, the Ekiti state capital, were seen traveling to their local governments ahead of Saturday's governorship elections. So it's looking like there will be election here on Saturday in Ekiti.
Well, beyond the look and feel in Ekiti, what is the thinking of the people? I wonder if you've interacted with them. How excited are they, or the lack of it, about this election, and you know how it would determine the turnout in tomorrow's exercise?
Okay, you know, like I told you, we arrived here yesterday, so we've not done much on that. But from the few people I was able to speak to, they're excited. There's this enthusiasm that they want to exercise their civic responsibility on Saturday. So I want to believe that there will be a large turnout of voters on Saturday for the governorship election.
There were concerns, you know, yesterday expressed on our sister political program about the presence of aliens, those who are not particularly journalists, and that, you know, they may not mean well for the elections. Have you made any such observations? And talk to us relatedly now about security in Ekiti, the state capital where you are, and perhaps you're hearing anything else about other parts of Ekiti state.
Okay, yesterday, like I said, we saw a long convoy of security agencies here in Ado-Ekiti, the Ekiti state capital. And from the NSCDC, we heard that 10,000 personnel have been deployed for this election. Why for the police, we've not really gotten the figures for the police, but they said they're on ground to ensure that there's no breakdown of law and order. And you know, people don't go around, some people don't go around with ID cards. So for the aliens you talked about, we definitely don't know who are aliens and who people that also mean well for the election and people that don't mean well for the election. But from what the security agencies are saying, they said they are across the 16 local government areas of Ekiti State to ensure that there's a smooth election on Saturday and of law and order.
Tokwe, thank you for reporting. Whatever happens next, we'll be here to bring people up to speed. Tokwe Kuteyi is our correspondent live on ground in Ado-Ekiti. Bukola.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to pick up from what Tokwe has told us about security as we return to Mr. Ojo. Mr. Ojo, I wonder if you also paid a bit of attention to the conversation on our sister political program yesterday, where the candidate of the other party expressed concern about intimidation, harassment, arrest of, supporters. From that particular revelation, does it make you worried about the election, about whether or not this would be free and fair? Or do you think security agents and INEC have a hang of it?
Well, Bukola, let me tell you, like I told you, I was in Ekiti on election-related scoping mission in February and March. And what we picked up, first in the pre-election period, the office, the secretariat of ADC was attacked in October 2025. There were damages done to the secretariat. We saw it. We have pictures of those damages. Then the opposition complained that the state agency for signage slammed 5 million naira on, is it 50 million or 5 million? I'm not too sure now. But millions of naira, which they said was just too expensive for them to pay if they want to mount billboards. I think it's 50 million that they have to pay. And you know, these opposition parties, many of them are struggling. So, because we did ask questions, why is it that we are only seeing the ruling parties billboards and posters everywhere? And we were told by the opposition at that time that the state agency for signage and adverts said if they want to paste any billboards, they have to pay millions of naira, something either 50 million or 5 million. I'm not too certain now. Then you also notice that there is low intensity intimidation, harassment of opposition. For instance, we are told that some of the even the internal APC in Ekiti faced internal rumbling. For instance, there are two aspirants that were disqualified who actually took the party to court. One of such cases was being determined by appeal courts, like on Wednesday, Mrs. Jumoke Omowumi and Engineer Kayode Ojo allegedly took the party to court over their purported disqualification during the primary. So some of their supporters alleged that they were under threat and there were harassment and molestation if they identify you as not belonging to the camp of the governor. Then the opposition too, particularly the PDP, made claims of harassment in Ekere, his hometown, and all of that. But you know that you won't have a very smooth election anywhere where there will be no. The one that is condemnable is when it becomes an high intense violence. because ahead of this election, the Kuka Center and the National Peace Committee actually facilitated the signing of peace accord. I think last month, the peace accord was signed by all the parties and their chairmen, and all because we want to have a peaceful election. So it's just that when you compare this election and previous election, you find out that compared to 2022, 2018, 2014, this election is about the most peaceful in terms of campaigns. It's not like there are no issues. Like I've tried to give you, both internally and externally, there are issues within the ranks of APC and among the opposition parties. But be that as it may, you cannot compare what happens in this election to what happens in 2022, when there were three frontline candidates, Pisikola Oli of PDP and Engineer Shrekmo of SDP and Abayomi, Biodun Abayomi Oyebanji of APC. At that time, in fact, the Ula Balu was much higher than what we are witnessing now. I cannot independently confirm that there are aliens or there are strangers, but you know, in every election, there are different people who will be mobilized to come. There are, for instance, there are vendors, vehicle operators who will be brought in from Lagos, from anywhere, to come and provide ancillary services in terms of transportation. Don't forget, there are 177 wards, and there are over 2,445 polling units, which will be served. So you cannot have only Ekiti people managing that process. There are a lot of observers on ground. There are a lot of security agencies on ground. There are a lot of journalists on ground. To say that some people are aliens, yes, there are aliens. I would have been there if I have the opportunity myself. I may be considered to be an alien because I'm not from Ekiti State.
All right, a fantastic point you've raised. But before we leave the Ekiti conversation and jump into maybe another part of politics, if we have the time, I want you to speak to us about your outlook in terms of security. What are you expecting? You expect it to be peaceful? In terms of INEC's performance, this is a litmus test for Professor Joash Amopitan. This is his first major election outside the area council election under the new electoral act. So this is first. As governorship election, this is the 2026 electoral act, and as chairman of the party of the commission, this is going to be his first. So your outlook on security, INEC's performance, and especially voter turnout in 1 minute, if you can.
Okay. So in terms of security, your guy there, Kute, just told us that NSCDC has deployed 10,000. We don't know how many thousands police has deployed, but usually you see prison, you see immigration, you see even anti-corruption agencies like ICPC, EFCC deploying to counter vote buying. So I believe if they have done their own work, as to say that they have mapped out 460 hotspots, flashpoints, then I believe that they will make necessary deployment to checkmate any harassment, abduction, intimidation tomorrow. In terms of INEC, what I will be looking out for is how early they commence. Recall that area council election that was held in February this year, in 55% of polling units, INEC did not deploy. INEC election did not start as at 8:30 that INEC said it will start. And I wonder if by today you have moved to registration area centers, RAC centers, which is the ward level. Why is it always a sticky point to move from that RAC center to the polling unit? So much so that we will not be hearing that election did not commence as at when scheduled. So I'm looking at early commencement of votes. I hope Amupita will be able to win that over. I'm looking at functionality of the beavers, that's a biometric accreditation system device.
Yes.
I hope that people will be properly accredited. Then the issue of sorting, counting, announcement of result and final declaration. I hope it will be seamless. And lastly, the uploading of result on IREF, because that is what many Nigerians will be following. IREF, how early was INEC able to upload this result? Ekiti is not a riverine area. There is no riverine local government there. And so the entire 2,445 polling units, we expect that before 10 p.m. tomorrow, all the results will have been uploaded so that the candidates who can fund a situation room can know their performance even before the final declaration of results.
And above all, Mr. Ojo, we also hope that the accord signed by all candidates in this election is not a mere signature appended to paper, and that they would walk the talk in tomorrow's exercise. And here's hoping that Ekiti residents will also shun vote buying and vote their conscience. We must thank you very much for coming. Mr. Jide Ojo is a public affairs analyst who has joined us on this conversation.
My pleasure. Do enjoy your weekend.
And you as well. And from here, we'll expand the scope of our conversation to look at happenings in the international community, especially that peace agreement that will be signed by the U.S. and Iran that will end that major conflict, that sent shockwaves across the world. We'll take a moment now. When we return, we'll begin that conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Let's bring in our guest, Ms. Onyekachi Dekoya. He's a security consultant joining us right now on the Morning Brief. Ms. Adekoya, good to see you and welcome to the program. If you can help us unmute your device so we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Jeffrey. I was muted by the control room.
Okay, so
good morning to the viewers.
So let's talk about what the expectations are. So everybody's waiting for. We've heard the announcement. Now everybody is waiting for the official signing. Maybe you walk us through the geopolitical significance of this signing and whether we should just have cautious optimism.
Well, as you know, the principal issue here before the parties is the Strait of Hormuz, which was not closed before the conflict and which has never been weaponized. I mean, when you look at the geopolitical ramification, it's broader because post this agreement, the continuous pressure point, it was a choke point before for at least 20-30% passage of global crude trade. But the weaponization of it is something that has post this agreement significant, which means that if Iran feels that Israel has violated a ceasefire, agreement, that choke point can be weaponized again. So it will look as though Iran is coming out of this a victor because American bases in the area has been destroyed. They are now going to have, according to reports, even by J.D. Vance, access to over 300 billion. They've also had a way to bring their proxies into the agreements. So continuing their regional influence, they would, by our understanding, continue to toll the choke point at the Strait of Hormuz, giving them additional revenue. This doesn't look like a good deal for President Donald Trump. It looks like a win for Iran. But what is most important to all of us is that, as we've been seeing, the price of crude should begin to come down. Now, we don't expect that things should go back to normal very quickly because it's going to take the shipping company some time and the insurance company some time to feel like they're comfortable enough to begin to access that route, and then shipping can go back to business as usual. Because remember that there's also a number of mining of the area, the channel of flow, the coordination between Iran and Qatar. So a lot of details still has to be worked out. But for now, I would say that I think the world is even a sigh of relief a bit that at least some agreement has been made. And then some of the knock-on effects on supply chain and even energy prices should begin to taper down a bit. That's the initial assessment, really, of this deal. and the outlook.
So as it is, there's something you said, maybe I missed it. Are you saying in clear terms, because America, perhaps from their own strategic objective, is to ensure that Iran doesn't develop nuclear weapons, and they said Iran has agreed never, that's a word that was used in, I think there's 8 or 9 paragraph in this agreement that we have, I don't know whether it's been redrafted, but talk to us about whether or not this remains international waters or under the control of Iran. I know you mentioned something like that in passing, because if it's still under the control of Iran, then what is America celebrating besides stopping them from developing nuclear weapons?
Geoffrey, even the development of nuclear weapon, it's not the first time that America will come into an agreement with Iran on the nuclear weapon issue. Now, what they say to the public and what they agree in principle are two different things. You can reduce the weapon stockpile, the enrichment, you can, deactivate some centrifuges. Iran still needs to show to its own constituency that, America is bluffing. America also needs to show its own constituency that has dealt a blow to it. The issue of nuclear enrichment is still there for Iran. Remember that Iran is a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Before this war, even the intelligence agency in America has said that Iran is not developing a nuclear weapon, and they've complied with all the whole. But what Iran is saying is that how can they not have a nuclear weapon if a near power like them has a nuclear weapon in the region? The other thing is on the maintenance of Iran's missile system. And they're saying, don't talk about our hypersonic weapons because the region is flooded with weapons. We're still going to retain that force. As to what the Americans are celebrating, I'm not really clear, because the facts on the matter, as it were, would be that Iran took on America and Israel and took them on a standstill and took them head on and emerged unscathed because of the principle of the escalation, dialing of escalation. There's something called it, I've forgotten it now. It's not about escalation dominance. Yes, escalation dominance. Because on the ladder of escalation, Iran retains escalation dominance. And the choke points they hold, how do you call it international waters? By international law, you have certain kilometers off of your shore that is your exclusive zone. That point is between Qatar and Iran to share. America has no business there. No other country in the region has any business there. So it's not true that it's international waters. What I worry about is when, you look at the UK Navy, for example, interdicting a Russian tanker or a tanker that's flagged from Sierra Leone coming from Russia in international water. You can see how the South China Sea has been weaponized all in the name of international water. I mean, some of those can be contested. But the choke of the Strait of Hormuz, is clearly not what you call international waters. It is within the territorial reserve of both Iran and Qatar.
Now let's examine...
And Oman.
Now let's examine the reactions of, politicians back home in the U.S. to this deal and tie it with, Israel's disposition to this deal that has now been reached between U.S. and Iran. Republicans are criticizing the funding component for the Iran deal for reconstruction. Although Vice President J.D. Vance, I'm reading, has also provided assurances that if Iran does not abide by the terms of the agreement by destroying its uranium enrichment, that there will be no funding. But the Israeli government has also hugely criticized this deal. And let's not forget that, where we started off from in the first place, this war was really seen as being prosecuted on behalf of Israel by the United States government. And so the question really is, if the Israeli government is not in support of this deal, should we be worried about parties abiding by it and there would be no resumption of hostilities against the backdrop of division within the U.S. government and the disposition of the Israeli government towards this deal?
Without sounding like a spokesman for the Iranian government, I mean, on the facts on the ground, under the Obama agreement. I don't know if you can hear me. Under the Obama agreement, yeah, Iran clearly, by the IAEA, by the Obama officials, was said that Iran was abiding by the terms of the initial agreement. It was this president of the United States that took the Americans out of that agreement. When Joe Biden came, they tried again to bring Iran back into it. Having found themselves abiding by every term of it, they had a bit of a distrust of the Americans, saying they wouldn't enter into an agreement like that again. Now, in terms of historically, empirically, Iran has not shown itself to be not willing to abide by the terms of the agreement. I mean, they allowed the IAEA inspectors into all their facilities, they kept to the terms. Even while they were negotiating, the decapitation attack was executed by both the Americans and the Israelis. So the issue of the constant threat to say if Iran does not abide, when in true practice Iran has been the one abiding by those terms. I think what Vance is worrying about is the reaction of Israelis, which is what you are also pointing to. This deal does not give, short of Israel nuking Iran, or America nuking Iran, there is no satisfaction that Israel will seemingly gain from a deal that sees Iran remain as a regional opposition and a regional hegemon to Israel's own aspiration within the region. Now, if you talk about great power politics and great power play, maintaining hegemonic influence is key to great powers. And within the region, Israel and Iran are great rivals. The hot talk about one blowing up the other is real because you have hardliners on the side of Iran as you have hardliners on the side of Israel. So you're hearing a bit of the geopolitical horse trading that is going on. Israel wants America to do more. America is tapped out. Their weapons stockpile is considerably low. The options they have short of a nuclear weapon are not good. And, if they could, they would have opened the Strait of Hormuz, but the Americans cannot. So, I mean, we had already analyzed that at some point, America will, cut its losses, lick its wound, and, declare a victory of some sort, and, sing themselves to a higher heaven that they have achieved something. We're in true fact that Iran is emerging stronger out of this. The bigger risk is that Israel may do something, which Israel would have to do in its own national interest, but then Iran has shown that it will also has the capability to escalate, match Israel fire for fire, short of a nuclear weapon, which if Israel does use, then it brings other nuclear powers into the conflict. So I think this is more or less like a logjam. Anything that comes out of this, is just all noise. This is all over as we see it. Israel has tried, America has tried, Iran has resisted, and Iran continues to develop new weapons capabilities. This is not going anywhere further than this, but if Israel escalates, Iran will retaliate.
And so we're just sitting on the edge, right? Even though we have been able to secure this deal.
Absolutely, and going historically, these are two brothers, really, Ishmael and Isaac. So they say the fight between two brothers is always very tough. So, I mean, the place would always be on a keg of gunpowder any day now. But America is losing a lot of influence now because the whole assumption of holding American bases in the Gulf is that an attack like the one which we have seen will not happen, and those bases will form a base of deterrence. But, even the bases themselves have been significantly destroyed, let alone the countries that were seeking protection from the bases. So I'm not sure what President Trump is getting out of this. The facts look like a diminished American influence in the region and a reshaping of the geopolitical posture of powers in that axis.
Well, maybe the only victory for him is to ensure that they don't develop nuclear weapon. He's been looking for an off-ramp, and I don't think it looks like somebody who is very good at the battle of attrition. So maybe exhausted already. I may be wrong. Onyekachi Adekoya is the MD, Aquiline Intelligence and Defense Consulting. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we've explored issues around politics. By the way, Bukola, I just remembered now that there are like 4 or so senatorial seats that will be contested for in by-elections.
Absolutely.
And 2 House of Reps. There's one in Ondo, the senator that went to the UN and all of that. So, but we'll take a break and come back and talk about one of the things I love the most, sports. Yes, how are the African teams doing as far as FIFA World Cup 2026 is concerned? That will be in a moment. Stay with us.
Yes, in the last couple of days, we've been served serious sporting action from the World Cup, from Canada to Mexico and the United States. Well, like Kayode, I really shouldn't have, a horse in this race, but because of the Pan-African sentiment, I am having to support Ghana, and I feel so excited because Ghana won their first match. Now I feel like an analyst. Anyway, our colleague Yemi joins us now on the program. Yemi, it's good to see you. This is your debut on the Morning Brief.
No, I think I'll be here a while back, but thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, which teams, have you been watching out for, following the first round of matches that we've been seeing, and they've been decided? I think England won their match,
yeah.
Ghana won their match, and I'm glad, about that. And Uzbekistan lost.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So based on what first matches always look like in the World Cup, what teams should we be looking out for following this first set of matches that are being played?
Two teams readily come to mind. By the way, this is the 23rd edition of the World Cup. This is the first to have 48 teams. We're going to see 104 matches. And so, going back to your question, I'll say England and France. Those two teams won their matches, didn't play to the levels we know they can, but still did enough to win their matches. And I'm saying that because of the kind of opposition. The Germans beat Curacao 7-1, but what were you expecting? Canada beat Qatar 6-0. What were you expecting? But England against Croatia, two sides that have gotten to the last four of the World Cup in the last three editions. It was going to be a good game, and it turned out to be a good game. So if you're asking me the two teams that I'm looking at, those two teams fit the bill, and I feel they've not even gotten to their best levels yet.
What about Argentina?
I think Argentina faced a really, really poor side in Nigeria, if you ask me. I know we will go to the issue of Lionel Messi scoring 3 goals, and my opinion may be subjective on that. I feel he wouldn't have scored those 3 goals against a stronger side. That is not playing down on the genius of Lionel Messi, but he won't do that against England, and I'm sure he won't do that against Spain. But of course now he equals Miroslav Klose on the level of 16 goals scored at the World Cup. But trust me, Kylian Mbappe is not too far away, 14 goals. So you feel at the end of this tournament, just as it was 4 years ago, the Golden Boot winner might just be one of these two guys.
So let's talk. Me, I'm more interested in Africa's performance than anything. I'm rooting for the entire Africa, even though South Africa pisses us off with the politics that is being played. But they are our brothers. Mm-hmm. We can't throw our brothers.
Yes.
And we're grateful yesterday that they were able to come back. And so we have 2 wins so far. I think that's Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. We have 5 draws. We have about 4 losses on the continent. For me, the most impressive was Cape Verde that held on to Spain. They were literally celebrating like they were in the finals of the World Cup, given how small they are as a country, and just coming to the World Cup for the very first time. Talk to us your own assessment of which African teams we should be looking at to be able to, get us to the round of 32, and then the ones that may not be able to get the points. And then we can know who we rely on in terms of having hope.
The Ivorians, straight away, off the bat, I'll say the Ivorians. I'll say Ghana, on the strength of what has happened.
Ghana with their performance yesterday.
Yes.
Ghana played against Panama. It's Panama.
There are 2 things. In fact, just one thing that matters at the end of the day in football. How many times you put the ball at the back of the net? So on the strength of the result, they have 3 points. South Africa has played twice, they have just 1 point. Once you have 3 points in the bag, in a competition that 3 teams can qualify from a group, then all you might need.
How many are in a group?
4.
4. 3 can qualify.
3 can qualify because it's 48 teams.
Oh.
So we're going to have a round of 32, round of 16. So 32 teams will qualify. There are groups that the third, I want to be sure of my stats now, but you're going to have a round of 32. So
what's the least you need? Maybe you need at least 4
That's
points.
where I'm going, 4 points. So if Ghana already has 3, I don't see them losing the next 2. It shouldn't be that bad that they wouldn't get a draw. So on the strength of that, so I'm not placing Ghana there because of performance results. For the Ivorians, yes, they was a gritty win. I still feel they gave a good account of themselves, and on the strength of that, some African teams are already pressing the panic button. One of them already sacked their manager, and they brought in Havrenad. I'm talking about the Tunisians here.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I missed out Morocco.
They are playing today, by the way.
So that's another team that should
Go far, right?
go far. On the strength of how they played against Brazil, the Brazilians had to struggle.
Yeah.
But again, you didn't ask me this, but I think I should throw it in.
You're the analyst.
Most of the teams that have their players in Europe have been overloaded with matches. And they came to this World Cup not playing at their best. A lot of them nursing injuries, a lot of them playing through the pain barrier, a lot of them not going as far as we know they can. You know, maybe giving us 60%.
Is it a fatigue problem?
Yes, that's it. So you have teams that their players didn't really play in the big leagues in Europe. They came in here refreshed, and they can, as we say, pack the bus against the bigger teams who should win, and in most cases are not able to win. And that's why we can sit here and celebrate Cabo Verde with what they did against the was classic smash and grab. And they could have won.
Yeah.
You know, if the Spanish were careless, they could have won. But I still feel that in the days to come, maybe the bigger teams will raise their levels. A lot of us felt that 48 teams, we're going to see a lot of rugby-like scorelines. We've seen Germany, Curacao 7-1. We've seen Canada yesterday, Qatar 6. That's the highest so far. I was thinking we're going to see 13-0.
We've seen Sweden with Tunisia.
Yes, 5-1. So I was thinking we're going to see
more,
but they've kept it pretty decent. Okay. They've kept it pretty decent. So we'll see what happens. But I feel the bigger teams, as they go.
You have emphasized more on results as against performance, but are you looking at that in relation to the teams that the next African teams will now be up against in the next round as they play? I believe Ghana, I've been looking out for Ghana really, is playing England. Are you worried about how they have played in their initial games as against the strength of the teams that they'll be meeting in their next matches? We'll see the same results.
I said Ghana particularly. The fact I'm looking at is this: if you're in a competition, how you play your first, not even how you play, the result in your first game in a group phase really matters. They have 3 points in the bag. Whether you like how they played against Panama is something else. But at the end of the day, they won. Now they can still afford a loss, but they shouldn't lose two games. Yeah. So where performance comes in is when you start a group phase and you didn't lose your first game, you have 3 points in the bag. You come in motivated. I have a feeling that their opponents will try to probably put everything, but you see, just as you were talking about Donald Trump, when it gets to a point that you don't get the result that you want, you calm down.
You look for an off-ramp.
You look for an off-ramp and, okay, if we don't lose this game. So I feel that Ghana can still keep it together against any top European side. I don't expect them to go toe-to-toe because that's how you get beaten. Everybody knows that now. When Spain, Germany, France, and those kind of team comes, you don't go toe-to-toe. You just try to see how you can lock shop and, you know. So on the strength of that, I still see Ghana going far.
There's a lot I want us to explore. And let's talk about the bright spots and we don't call it the bright spot, or some of our shining stars. Yeah. Maybe not personalities in our country. What do you think happened with Senegal and against France? What do you think happened?
I think at the end of the day, the quality of the French. It's just like boxing. You're in there first 6 rounds.
They were holding it together.
That's the point.
They were holding it together for a long time. We're like, what is going on here? Is this going to be a repeat of what we saw, I think, 2012?
Yes.
They really held it together. So it looks like, okay, if there's anything that's going to happen here from France, it's going to be against against the run of play.
Yeah.
But boom, everything changed.
That's what I'm saying. It's like boxing. You're on your feet for the first 6 rounds. Then you begin to gas out. Then the opponent that couldn't land punches starts to land those punches. And that's what happened. You looked at that game and you looked at the personnel the French had. And you always knew that if these guys could click into gear, the Senegalese were going to be in trouble. And they held it for a particular period and it got to a point. I like their response initially, but I also think when you're playing against France, you don't close your eyes. And they pay dearly for it. Because those guys will take their chances when you have Olise, Mbappe, Dembele, Desiree Doué.
They were caught asleep in that first goal.
And that's what happened. It wasn't so much that the French team were better, which is the point you're trying to make. It wasn't that the gulf was evident. No,
no, it wasn't.
No, but the class of those players meant you give them half a chance.
Yes,
they will take it.
Clinical confessions.
Which was what happened.
Now, Yemi, there were a lot of concerns about how this World Cup would pan out against the backdrop of those new rules that were introduced at the time. What, from your observations and the performances so far, talk to us about the resilience of the players and the officiating, the management of the game so far.
I don't think anybody will have any complaints. Maybe Iran might have issues about visa restrictions and all that. But for all football fans, the hydration breaks, the VAR, and the way they're using AI to monitor the movement of the players. And I mean, you can't. I mean, there was a goal that was to be a goal that, instantly you saw VAR, and a lot of incidents in this World Cup that you will have to accept that science has come to stay. And it has made it better. I've not seen anything that has been introduced that has watered down the quality. I
had a problem initially, and there were concerns. I even raised with some other persons. But whether or not that
with
is
the water
playing
breaks?
out, no, the hydration breaks. Not the hydration breaks. Okay. The too many rules, too much technology that may kill the vibe of the game.
Yes.
Were we too pessimistic or too worried at the initial point, and now it shows that technology is actually needed?
I think I'll go with what Buki said. You see, when it gets to a point, you have to live by what you have, and I think that's the resolve. The countries, the players, these things have come to stay. So you don't have a choice. In fact, there is even one that is a bit troubling. The Americans want to turn this World Cup to an NBA style, halftime interviews, some of the things that. But you see, some of the things you just have to live by them. And just like VAR, when VAR was brought into it, we had our
slow the game.
Objections, to slow the game. But now we're getting used to it. It's better than that a wrong call. If we have to wait 3-4 minutes for a wrong call not to be made, it's better for a wrong call to be made.
Yeah, because
since 1966, we're still talking about that England goal was not a goal. Up to today, if we have VAR, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, because some people were saying that I think it was the Iran match that they maintained a certain momentum until at some point when they maintained that momentum, but because of that hydration break, something went wrong, or their momentum died.
Yes.
Is that also a valid point?
It is a valid point, but sometimes these are things you have to live with. Before this tournament, we knew there was going to be an hydration break, so you have to factor that in. It slows down the momentum, really. It slows down the momentum, but definitely you have to accept that it's part of the game. It's something, just as you said, we just have to live by.
Yes, it is what it is. The game is the game.
Yes.
And we hope that there will be more stamina demonstrated as we have seen so far. Of course, more excitement in the coming days, but we must suspend the conversation for now to be continued after another round of performances.
That sounds like a movie to be continued.
Yemi Adebayo is our sports correspondent and anchor here at Channels Television. Yemi, it's good to be with you on the same set.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, it's the Friday edition after all. well. So let's get to be serenaded by a very interesting artist. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Beautiful music. I know it's morning and you would have loved to listen to that in the evening, but hey, it's a morning brief right here on Channels Television. Let's bring in the guy you saw in that particular video. His name is B. Johnson. He's a state, that's a brand.
Thompson.
Oh, my apologies. B. Thompson.
Thompson. It's like the H is silent. Thompson.
Okay. An American saxophonist, multi-instrumentalist, and performer from Indianapolis, Indiana, and of course based in LA. Welcome to, say this is your second time of being in Nigeria.
Yeah, my second time in Nigeria.
Saxophone, I love that instrument. I have a friend who plays the saxophone.
Nice.
At least I prefer it to the trumpet because I felt like the trumpet stresses on me too much.
I tried trumpet. It didn't work out too well, but...
Why did you choose the saxophone?
You know, I've always said that I think the sax chose me, you know, because there's many instruments I could have been playing when I was a kid, and when I was 9 years old, once I came across that instrument, I just stuck with it for the past 19 years.
What's the difference, by the way, between sax and the trumpet?
Oh, well, there's quite a few differences. You know, so the saxophone technically is considered a woodwind instrument, even though it's also made of brass, and then the trumpet is considered a brass instrument because the mouthpiece is made of brass, but the saxophone uses a piece of wood to create the sound. So they're just musical terminologies, but I like the sax. I think it sounds more like a human voice.
Oh.
So you've been playing since you were 9?
Yes.
This particular instrument?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did, just walk us through your history, because I'm seeing the list of the people you perform with. These are not ordinary names in the industry globally.
Yeah.
So talk to us how you got involved in playing the saxophone.
You know, I don't even know how I got to this point. And when I think about it, you know, I think everything just kind of snowballed. You know, I grew up playing music in the church, and I was singing, and you know, at the time, and 3, 4, 5 years old. And then as I got older, you know, my parents, you know, my family just exposed me to a lot of different music. So I would listen to a lot of different music, you know, so R&B, pop, you know, and then jazz was one of those genres as well. So eventually, you know, I say kids are sponges. They soak up everything that you know, they just got here. So this new world that they're experiencing new things. So, you know, 7, 8, you know, 9 years old, I'm listening to jazz music, and I'm like, well, what is this instrument that is the primary instrument that I hear in jazz? And, you know, they were like, well, that's the saxophone. And, you know, as a kid, I'm like, well, I want to play the sax then. I like this music. And then, you know, eventually I got my first saxophone when I was 9 years old, and was practicing, and like after like the first 6 to 7 months, I think I got my first gig. You know, I did a talent show.
That was not long at all.
No, I was, you know, I have a bit of ADHD where I kind of zone in on one thing obsessively. So once I picked it up and I realized that I liked it, I would do my homework on the bus so I could go home and practice for like 4 or 5 hours a day, like nonstop. So, and I still love it just as much.
That's some love, really. That's passion there.
For sure.
I'm reading about you, and besides the ADHD, you play in your right ear, am I correct?
I have hearing loss in my right ear. I have what's called sensory neural hearing loss.
And you still play so excellently.
You know, by the time I was diagnosed, I had already was well into, you know, playing. I think I was, you know, playing music for years and years and years. But before then, and I never even realized it. It more so hindered me in more social, you know, communicative settings, but not in music. You know, so a lot of times people talk to me, and they think I'm ignoring them, and I'm just like, oh wait, you're talking to me. But if it's music, I can hear it. It cuts through.
So where does your sound come from? You know, if that disability doesn't affect you in any way, where do you hear your sound? Talk to us about your creative process.
So I got a lot of influence from a lot of, you know, old contemporary saxophonists as far as my sound on the saxophone, and some new saxophonists, you know, so a lot of people are familiar with, you know, people like Kenny G, and, you know, I grew up listening to Dave Koz, David Sanborn, Boney James, so those are the more current guys, you know, that kind of popularized the saxophone. And then, you know, later on in my years, I was listening to a lot of older cats, you know, Cannonball, John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, you know, Art Porter, just a lot of older saxophones, Sonny Rollins, and that's where I kind of learned the respect and the history behind jazz rather than just the popularity of it. And I think all those just the amalgamation of all of that is just what kind of made me what I am today. And I'm still developing and finding myself to this moment. I don't think I've broken out yet or have made it to what by normal standards people would consider made it, maybe to some, but to myself, I'm like, well, I got to keep going. There's still more to achieve.
You played with Babyface, you played with Tony Braxton. Some back here would consider that you're at the top already. So what would success be if you played with those category of artists and you think you're still not there?
I would say that working with those people that's success by association. Because
I like that.
I've played for almost everybody, and I think that while I would love to continue to collaborate with them and more people in the future, when I'm not with them, I try to focus on what am I doing. I would love for people to be excited to work with me.
So if I understand you very well, you want your own unique sound, just like we have the Kenny G's and all of those guys. That sounds we hear just, this is Kenny, and all of that.
Kind of the household name for the world in saxophonists, but and so it's easy for a lot of musicians to be inspired by the one thing, or if there's not many other examples for them to be inspired by. So it's almost kind of the standard, amongst modern saxophonists that have been inspired by Kenny G.
As we wind down, there's something that keeps resonating, just ringing in my mind, and that has to do with how much space there is for calm music in a very noisy world.
It does exist. People ask me what songs I listen to on a regular sometimes, and I actually don't listen to a lot of songs that have like words in it. I spend a lot of time listening to like lo-fi or songs that don't have words in them, just instrumental, backing music, or mood music, as people would say. And the reason why I like that is because it kind of hits the brain differently, so I kind of look at instrumental music that way. Maybe I don't need music that I can participate in. I need music that is assisting me, in my daily endeavors. You throw in music while you're getting ready, and it's different for everybody. Some people like to sing their favorite.
So this suits your personality.
Yeah.
Does it feel lonely? Because majority of the world want to sing along to a certain music. They have a certain musician that they identify with. Does your class feel lonely?
Yeah, it can be, because it's a little limited. Jazz is, or even smooth jazz, even in a way, is not a. It's very minimal compared to other genres of music, that have way more listeners and more involvement. So I think that there's a responsibility to expose people to other forms of music, and so sometimes I will play jazz when I'm with my friends rather than just playing popular music. And I think that people don't know what they might be interested in because they haven't been exposed to it.
I love jazz, by the way. It's beautiful, beautiful music any time in the day. Jazz music, orchestra generally is beautiful. It's very soothing. I don't know whether it comes with age. When you were younger, you just want to listen to crazy stuff. I used to get older, I want a bit of a more quieter world so that you can navigate. But talk to us, you're in Nigeria. What brought you here? And how many Nigerian musicians have you met, maybe within your genre, or generally the artists, the creative space?
Well, so I'm actually here for the TAF event, Afrotrade Entrepreneur Festival that they have. So that's been exciting to participate in that.
The one that the
Secretary of Transportation for California is also attending.
Yes, absolutely. Connected with him as well. Yeah, so we did a gala yesterday, and we played for which was so nice, and which actually brings me to answering your second question, which was Nigerian musicians. So I met some Nigerian musicians yesterday for the first time, about 7 of them, and we had never met before. Surprisingly, a few of them knew who I was, which I always think it's an honor if people know who I am, because I don't know how far my name has gotten in the world, but I'm grateful for that, and I got a chance to play with them for the first time, and you would have thought you all been playing together for years. So the chemistry is just unmatched.
Can you remember any names?
So actually, I'll go down all the names. It was Siwa, Best, Tulu, Snappy, and Top Keys. Were all the musicians. They all play drums, keys, bass, guitar, and they were just incredible. In Eugene, yes.
And finally, what are you working on currently? A musical project?
Yeah, so I'm working on some things actually here in the continent with some African producers and artists, which will be coming soon. And then, of course, I'm always doing a lot of work in the United States. So the goal is just to really put out more original content and more of my own music and show people more of my own creative creations.
Thompson. How would you prefer to be called? What I have is B. Thompson, but you prefer to be called Thompson.
Thompson.
All right.
Like with a T. So it's actually not pronounced Thompson.
Oh,
so
Thompson.
The H is silent. So imagine it spelled T-O-M.
You have to say that over and over again.
No, sorry, I know. I mean, the dialect here, so people been saying it. I think it's funny, you know.
Yeah.
But I've gotten all kinds of different names, you know. I go by B. Thompson because I've gotten Brain, B-R-A-I-N. I've gotten B-R-I-A-N. My name is B-R-Y-A-N. So I just call it B. Thompson. Keep it simple.
Save us the stress.
Yeah.
American saxophonist, multi-instrumentalist and performer who lives and does business in LA. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it on the program. Thank you so much for your time. We hope you enjoy your weekend. Hopefully we should be here tomorrow for what's playing out in Ekiti State, where the elections will be happening for governorship and about 4 other places for senatorial, as well as 3 other places or so, or 2 for the House of Reps by-elections. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma. Bye-bye.
And that's definitely, we'll be here again 7 a.m. tomorrow for the Ekiti election coverage. Our studios will be open, and of course we'll bring you up to speed with everything that is happening. We'll be back again tomorrow. Do have yourselves a wonderful weekend. I am Bukola Koka.